Hey, what's going on, guys? So if you didn't know, I host a podcast called the Bear Performance Podcast. And last week on the show, we had Cameron Haynes, who is an ultra endurance athlete as well as a professional bow hunter. And I asked him during the podcast to describe the perfect hunt. And he did an amazing job. So we want to share that part of the episode with you here shortly. But if you want to watch or listen to the entire episode, we will have links below in the description of this video. And without further ado, Cameron Haynes describing the perfect hunt. I'd love to hear like what a perfect day, what a perfect hunt looks like, what it feels like, what it smells like taking people through that experience, that emotional experience of why you keep doing it and what makes your sport different than the guy taking a 6-pack and going sitting in a blind.
Yeah. For me, the perfect day, I guess I'll set the setting of this hunt, but I like wild country. I like big country. I like having this romanticized thought that there's nobody else been back here for years, right? So where I got that in the lower 48 was in the thoroughfare of Wyoming, big mountain range. It's the largest roadless area in the lower 48. So I don't know, I can't remember how big it is, miles or acres, but it's very expansive. And back there, you're near Yellowstone Park, but of course that's protected, but it's the mountains that's in that same type of country. And because it's so wild, there's grizzlies, there's wolves, there's of course coyotes, there's mountain lions, and there's no, the traffic is, because to get where I was hunting, it was a 28-mile horseback ride. And then I was 10 miles from that to where I was doing this hunt I want to describe. That's so remote, you're just not going to see people. But my perfect hunt, it was back there. If I think about it right now, it's just like everything was perfect. So here's what I see. Getting up at camp, 4 a.m, getting some food. It's an outfitter camp, canvas tents. You can hear the horses in the dark rustling around. They need to eat too. Maybe just kind of gathering your gear together, because back there, anything can happen. Weather can move in. It's the high country. Because it's so remote, an injury can result in a life flight helicopter if there's one even available or can get back there. So you take all the gear you need to survive in case something happens. Your pack's all loaded up. Get over there, put in the panniers of the horse, take off before first light with the horse, and you get up to where you can hear some bugles, maybe get a good glassing point as the sun comes up. So the sun comes up, it's exposing the most picturesque setting you've ever seen, the most incredible mountains. It looks like, God's paintbrush up there. It's just what you visualize when you think of wild and mountains. And as the sun comes up, of course, it's red, amber glow at first, and then color starts to come into the mountains, and then things start popping out, and then the colors are pretty vibrant in that perfect setting before the sun gets too high and too intense. But that's when you can glass the animals, because in that low, perfect light like that with the sun's still on the mountains, but the animal's hair glows. Deer are easier to see, even though they're dark gray by this time. Some might still have their summer coat, which is kind of reddish. Those will pop. The elk, which are creamy colored, those will really pop. And you can see elk from a great distance in that perfect light. So once the elk is spotted, you determine whether it's a big bull. The hunt I remember, it was in this remote basin. We went over, glassed down, and saw a black grizzly. It very dark. I thought it looked black, but it's definitely a grizzly bear, and it's going across the top of the basin. Below that was a herd of elk and a big bull. The wind is coming up because now the sun's up, so the thermals have warmed. So the wind is rising slowly as it comes. So I need to approach that bull from the top, right where that grizzly walked, is flipping rocks looking for food. I circle around him. He moves over towards the head of the basin. I go on his backside and drop down towards that bull. Had a guide with me. This is wilderness country, so in Wyoming, a guide is required. I like hunting on my own, but where it's required, it's required. But we moved down towards that bull, and by now it's pretty warm. The sun's been up. The dust is, every step will be it'll stir the dust up. It'll come up with around your boot and settle back down. And I had the guide behind me doing a cow call, and a cow call is you're just mimicking a female elk, and it's just a like that. He's down, wind's coming up, good. So he's above me. So that bull is below me. I'm between the caller and the bull. The bull rips off a bugle. There's this thin row of trees, kind of stunted trees up in that high country. The growing season isn't very long because there's so much snow. So the growing season means that these trees grow pretty slow. So they stay small for a long time, years and years and years, and then they finally get bigger. Well, these trees are up about maybe 20 feet tall, probably pretty old trees because that growing season this is 10,000 feet. So it's in snow a lot of the year until the spring and summer. But I see those trees and I use them as a screen. With this wind coming up, I can still see the wind every once in a while. I have a wind checker, but I don't really need to because that dust around my boot is rising up the hill with the thermals. That bull actually comes from behind that strip of trees. By this time, I'm 50 yards away, and he's walking, and he can't see me, so that screen of trees is working perfect. And it's not clear enough where I can shoot, so I'm on my knees, and I'm waiting for him. You still watch the wind the whole time because the wind switches for a second, and if you feel that wind on the back of your neck, it pushes your scent towards the bull. Bull's gone. That's how they survive, is their nose. Their defense system is nose, eyes, ears. So if they smell you, it's over. They can see you, and if you don't move for long enough, they'll stare. They're not sure what they saw. They thought they saw movement. Stare. You stay. You keep your head down. You don't want your eyes. A prey animal can feel the stare of a predator. So you keep your hat bill down over your eyes. You're looking kind of at the animal's feet. So I'm looking at his hooves. He's looking up towards me, and I see he starts to walk again. So I raise my bill back up, and now I can just peek under my hat. But he's going further away. I try to hustle up because every step he takes, he's getting further away. And their strides are long. So I'm trying to go slow. He's just a stride. He's an 800-pound animal that's, 6 feet at the shoulders, head's going up higher, and his strides are long. I'm losing ground. So by the time I get up to where I get a clear shot, now he's out there at a pretty long bow range. He's out there over 80 yards. And the sun's right behind him. So he starts to make a dry wallow. He goes down with his antlers, and a dry wallow is there's no water. A lot of times these bulls want to get in a muddy wallow. They cool off. There's thoughts that mud sticking to their hide makes them look bigger. Animals can't communicate with voice, but they can with body language. So there's a thought that they feel like caking that mud on them by laying in a wet, muddy wallow makes them appear bigger. And they're so aggressive. So they got that testosterone raging through their body because this is a breeding season. This is when they breed the cows. Intense competition among bulls. Well, he starts making this dry wallow. There's no water, so there's no mud, but he gets this dust flying up, and he's raking his antlers. Antlers are hitting dirt, scraping rocks. It's making quite a racket just in the ground there, but this big dust flume is flying up. And I'm a long bow shot away, but I feel comfortable. I feel confident. This is, 38 miles from the trailhead, as wild as you can get. Just saw a grizzly, heard wolves all night. This is the exact moment that I live for. As that dust settles and the bull stops, he's quartering away slightly. I range him with my rangefinder, tells me the yardage. I dial my sight. My sight is an adjustable sight, so I can dial it to the exact, has a pin, one pin. I can put it on the exact yardage that animal is that I ranged. So now it comes down to me making the shot and that animal cooperating and staying put. He's got cows, so he's never really staying put because he's worried about other bulls coming in. So he's surveying the country below him where the cows are. He's watching for intruders. He's keeping an eye on predators because those grizzlies and wolves are around. And a lot of time these bulls in that country, they don't like to call as much because every time they call like a bugle, it'll bring predators because the predators know there's a herd there. They're not going to kill a big bull, but they're going to kill a calf or a cow. So the bulls know this. So he's not calling a ton because this country is so wild. He doesn't want those grizzlies in there, but he's calling enough just to keep the atmosphere there and to announce to other bulls that this is my herd, stay back. I come to full draw as he hesitates and he's looking down the hill. That dust is settling slowly. The sun is right behind him. So it's lit up. When I put my pin up to shoot, because I'm shooting into the sun, makes it very hard to see that pin. And it's so bright, but I'm looking at him and he's silhouetted in that dust and the sun there. And the pin comes down and it locks right on behind his shoulder where I want to shoot. I feel confident. I settle in. I level up my bow. There's a level on my bow sight. If you can't one way or the other, you can be off with your shot. You can't to the left, you might be off a foot to the left. You can't to the right, same way to the right. So I level up. I got my bubble on my sight right in the middle. I put my pin right behind his shoulder, a little back from the crease because her shoulder blade is pretty heavily boned. It'll stop an arrow if you hit that shoulder blade, or can stop an arrow. So I come back a few inches from the crease of his shoulder, settle in, level up, slowly feel that trigger. I can feel with my index finger, trying to relax, deep breath. My heart feels calm. Slowly applied pressure to my release, and it releases and it lets that bowstring go. The bowstring pushes my arrow towards that bull. It's going about 290 feet a second by the time it leaves my bow. Bow releases, arrow's arcing towards that bull. He's still looking down the hill. I can watch that arrow track up into the sun, which is directly behind the bull, but that arrow goes up and I lose it in the sun. And then as the last moment, as it gets close to that bull, it drops down below his body line and strikes home perfectly behind his shoulder, about 8 inches up from the bottom of his body, exactly where you want the shot. The arrow cuts through both lungs, goes all the way through the bull, the 800-pound animal, and comes out on the other side. He runs 40 yards. He's stopped. Dust is flying again. His blood pressure is dropping because an arrow kills by hemorrhage, not by shock. A bullet will kill by shock. It'll break bones and muscle and tear things. A loud noise, that gets the animals wound up. With a bow shot perfect like that, he doesn't know what happened. They get jabbed all the time. They're very physical animals, giant animals. But that arrow goes through so fast, he doesn't know what happened. He ran 40 yards, and all he knows is he's feeling lightheaded because his blood pressure dropped. His blood pressure, he keeps losing blood because that razor sharp broadhead has caused a big hemorrhage through his body cavity, through both lungs. And in seconds, he passes out and then dies from blood loss. This all happens. My shot was 80 yards. He ran 40 yards and piled up, and he was dead in 10 seconds. I slowly make my way to the bull, kneel down, put my hand on him. I thank him for his sacrifice, and I will honor it. His memory with his antlers will be on my wall. The meat will be in my freezer. I'm hauling it home on these first out of this wilderness on the horses, then get processed, then cut up, frozen in my freezer to share with my friends and family. And that moment where I'm there with him, that is the vivid memory that I'll never forget. That whole experience I'll never forget, but that moment where the bull is fallen, he's fallen from my arrow, one arrow from my bow, a merciful death, a quick death, the best death a prey animal can ever have, because otherwise it's old age, starve, predators eat them as they die. They're not even dead yet. Predators will be eating them. Or another bull fighting will kill them. I found dead bulls out there from an antler wound in the neck. Or it's just plain starving because they can't move around enough to find food. A merciful death from a perfectly placed arrow is the best death they'll get. This is an old bull. He's lived his life 10 years back in the most wild country there is. in the lower 48, and he's done his job. The herd will survive. He's been a fixture in that country for many years, but there's young bulls to take his place. And to me, that's the perfect time.